Welcome to the CareClinic Pod. I'm Emma, and this is Jones.
Have you ever felt like you're kind of just going through the motions?
Yeah.
Like you're not really present?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like that feeling of disconnect.
Exactly. And a lot of our CareClinic app users actually have been asking about this, especially when it comes to mindfulness. They're wondering if, those moments of spacing out could actually be mindfulness in disguise. What do you think?
That's a really interesting question. And it shows how mindfulness and dissociation can feel so similar, on the surface, at least.
Right.
But they're completely different when it comes to your mental well-being.
So for our listeners out there, can we break down what those core differences are between mindfulness and dissociation?
Sure. So think of it this way. Mindfulness is like tuning into a radio station. You're choosing to focus on a specific frequency, like your breath, your body, or what's around you. Dissociation, on the other hand, is more like getting static. It's a disconnect from what's happening right now, a kind of mental escape from reality.
That makes sense. So with mindfulness, you're making that choice to be present. But dissociation is more like an automatic thing. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, you got it. And that difference is really important.
Yeah.
It all comes down to how much control you have. Mindfulness is an active practice. You're working on it.
Right.
Dissociation often comes from stress or trauma. It's something that just kind of happens to you, not something you choose.
We see this a lot with technology, right?
Yeah.
We have meditation apps that are all about mindfulness. And then you've got social media algorithms that are basically designed to keep us in that dissociative scroll.
Exactly. All those notifications and news feeds and perfect pictures, they can totally overload our brains.
Right.
Leading to us zoning out and not being present.
It's almost like our brains need a break from all that.
Yeah.
And they just default to dissociation.
Yeah, could be.
But, a lot of people say that when they dissociate, it actually feels peaceful, calming even. So how do we know if it's actually a bad thing?
That's a great question. And it gets to the core of why understanding this difference is so important. Dissociation might give you some relief from stress for a bit, but it really stopped you from being fully engaged in your life.
Whereas mindfulness lets us be more present in everything we do.
Exactly. It gives you the awareness and resilience to deal with challenges. You're not running away from tough emotions or situations.
Right.
You're learning to just observe them without judgment, and that helps you manage them way better.
So it's about changing how we see those tough emotions.
Yeah.
Not getting rid of them.
You got it. And that's where mindfulness really shines. Studies show that practicing mindfulness can lower your stress, help you focus better, manage your emotions, and it can even make you feel happier overall.
Wow, that's amazing. We could all use a little more of that these days. Let's go back to dissociation for a minute. How can we tell if it's happening in our everyday lives?
Well, sometimes it can be subtle. You might daydream more than usual, or have trouble remembering conversations, or maybe just feel emotionally numb. But in more extreme cases, dissociation can feel like you're detached from your body, like you're watching yourself from the outside.
Those sound pretty intense.
Yeah.
When should someone think about getting professional help for dissociation?
If it's happening a lot, or it's starting to mess with your daily life, like your work or your relationships or just your ability to function, then it's time to reach out to a therapist or mental health professional. And don't forget, the CareClinic app has a great tool for finding therapists to get you started.
That's a great resource to have, but let's be honest. It can be hard to tell if we're actually being mindful or just spacing out. Are there any clear signs we can look out for?
One of the biggest differences is awareness. Mindfulness is about being super aware. You're actively noticing your thoughts and feelings and physical sensations, but you don't get swept away by them. With dissociation, though, you're basically checking out mentally, like your mind's on autopilot, and you're not really tuned in to what's going on around you.
So it's like mindfulness is turning up the volume on everything we're experiencing inside, and dissociation is hitting the mute button.
I like that analogy. And it shows another key difference: intention with mindfulness. You're deciding to pay attention. It's something you practice. Dissociation usually comes from stress. It just happens automatically. You don't choose it.
Okay, so intention and awareness are key things to think about.
Right.
But I have to admit, I still get confused sometimes, especially when I'm trying to meditate. Sometimes it feels like I'm just spacing out. How can we tell the difference?
That's really common. And it shows how the line between those two states can get blurry, especially during meditation.
Right.
Remember, meditation isn't about making your mind go completely blank. It's about creating space to observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
So it's not about stopping our thoughts. It's about changing how we relate to them.
Exactly. And a good way to tell if you're meditating mindfully or just dissociating is to pay attention to how you feel afterwards. Do you feel grounded and refreshed and more connected to yourself? Or do you feel kind of spaced out and disconnected and foggy?
Those are great questions to ask ourselves. It sounds like paying attention to those subtle cues inside is really important.
It is.
And speaking of tuning in, we're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsor.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to explore how mindfulness and dissociation affect our daily lives.
Sounds good. Welcome back, everyone.
So before the break, we were talking about how to recognize those little signs of mindfulness and dissociation. But how does all this actually play out, in our daily lives?
Well, let's take work, for example. I mean, have you ever just zoned out completely during a meeting?
Oh, yeah,
Or felt your mind wandering when you're doing something repetitive?
definitely. But is that always dissociation, or could it just mean we need a break? Or maybe even a whole new career?
You've got a point. It's not about saying every time you space out, it's dissociation. It's about noticing the patterns and how they're affecting you. If you're zoning out at work all the time, or you can't focus, or you feel disconnected from what you're doing, it might mean there's something bigger going on.
So we should be paying attention to how often it happens,
Yeah.
how intense it is, and what effect it's having on us.
Exactly. And the same goes for our relationships. You know those times when you're with someone, but your mind is totally somewhere else?
It happens to everyone. But when does it become a problem?
If you're always checking out during conversations,
Right.
or you can't connect with your loved ones, or you feel emotionally distant, it could be dissociation creeping into your relationships.
That makes sense. And I imagine mindfulness could really help us build stronger connections.
Oh, absolutely. When you're practicing mindfulness, you're more present and in tune with the other person. You listen more deeply, you empathize more fully, you communicate better.
So mindfulness can help us get out of those autopilot interactions and really connect with people.
Exactly. And that's not all. Mindfulness can even have a big impact on our physical health.
Really? How so?
Well, we know that constant stress can really mess with our bodies, leading to all sorts of problems.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Like headaches and stomach issues, weaker immune system, even heart problems.
That's scary.
Yeah.
So are you saying that mindfulness can help us manage that stress?
Yeah.
And avoid those health problems?
Exactly. When you're more mindful, you're better at recognizing and dealing with stress in healthy ways. Plus, studies have shown that mindfulness practices like meditation can actually lower your cortisol levels. That's the hormone that's linked to stress.
So mindfulness is good for our minds and our bodies.
That's incredible.
It really is. But let's be real. Trying to fit mindfulness into our busy lives can feel overwhelming.
I know what you mean. Any advice on how to start?
The good news is, you don't need anything fancy or hours of practice to feel the benefits of mindfulness. You can start with just a few minutes every day.
Okay.
Focus on your breath.
Yeah.
Notice what you're feeling in your body. Or just observe your thoughts without judging them.
So small steps, but do them consistently.
Exactly. And remember, there are tons of resources to help you on your mindfulness journey. The CareClinic app, for example, have guided meditations, breathing exercises, and tips for being mindful throughout your day. That's a great resource. What about dealing with dissociation? Is there anything we can do to prevent it?
One of the best things you can do is figure out what's stressing you out and causing the dissociation. Then you can address those things. It might involve therapy or medication, or maybe just some lifestyle changes like getting better sleep, exercising regularly, or practicing relaxation techniques.
And if those things don't work, it's important to get professional help, right?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Remember, the CareClinic app can help you find therapists and mental health resources near you.
That's so important to keep in mind. It makes me realize that navigating mindfulness and dissociation, it's a journey, not a destination.
That's a great way to put it. There will be times when you feel more present and connected, and other times when you feel spaced out and disconnected. The key is to be kind to yourself, be curious, and
Yeah.
keep trying different things to find what works best for you.
That's a great reminder. We're all human. We're all in this together. And we're back. Something I've been thinking about is how personal all this is. What feels like mindfulness to one person could feel totally different to someone else, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's no single definition for either of these states. It's all about how you experience them and what effect they have on you.
That's a good point. And it reminds me of those gray areas we talked about, where it's not so obvious whether you're being mindful or dissociating. What's your advice for navigating that?
Just pay close attention to how you feel inside. Ask yourself, What are your thoughts and feelings like in this moment? Are you aware of what's around you? Do you feel grounded and present or kind of detached and spaced out?
It's about listening to those little cues our bodies and minds give us.
Exactly. And there's no right or wrong answer here. The important thing is that you're becoming more aware of what's happening inside and that you're taking care of yourself.
And that's where resources like the CareClinic app can really help. Having those tools and information available makes it so much easier to take charge of our mental health.
Absolutely. Now, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about. In our world, where everything's so fast-paced and we're constantly connected, how can we make more space for those mindful moments? And how can we create a deeper connection with ourselves and the world around us?
That's a powerful question to consider. And remember, everyone, cultivating mindfulness, it's a journey, not a destination. Be kind to yourself, practice patience, and celebrate those small wins along the way.
Well said. And remember, you're not alone in this. There are resources out there, like the CareClinic app, and there are communities of people who can support you and guide you.
Thanks for listening to the CareClinic podcast. We'll see you next time.